C'est du mensonge, c'est de la manipulation. Dire que l'armée est en train de tuer les populations civiles, c'est archi faux. Donc nous disons, où sont les États-Unis? Ce sont les mêmes États-Unis qui ont brûlé la Libye. Ce sont les mêmes États-Unis qui ont brûlé la Syrie. Nous le savons très bien. Et en Palestine, ce sont les États-Unis qui ont brûlé la bande de Gaza. Nous ne sommes pas dupes. Nous sommes là pour montrer aux États-Unis que le peuple burkinabé est souverain. Le peuple burkinabé est en train de prendre la tête en main.
For that does not mean what happens when the United States makes baseless allegations against African nations. Often, these accusations serve to divert attention from issues within the US itself. However, when this tactic was employed against Burkina Faso, calling it a violent state, people protested in the streets, pointing out how individuals are treated in the United States. The question arose, why does Western media rarely report on the wrongdoings of the US yet frequently spread misinformation to make other nations look bad? In recent months, Burkina Faso has witnessed a surge of public protests that have captured national and international attention. These demonstrations are fueled by a complex interplay of local grievances and broader geopolitical dynamics, reflecting deep-seated frustrations and a desire for greater sovereignty and justice. But what sparked the protests in Burkina Faso? The immediate trigger for the protests in Burkina Faso was a series of accusations leveled by the United States against the country's armed forces. Accusations were serious and multifaceted, alleging that the Burkina Faso military was involved in a range of human rights abuses and other illicit activities. The specifics of these allegations included reports of extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detentions, and torture. Additionally, there were claims of the military engaging in corruption and illicit trade, further tarnishing their reputation both domestically and internationally. For many BINAB, these allegations from the United States were not just a critique of their military but felt like a profound affront to their national dignity. Burkina Faso, a nation with a complex history of colonialism and foreign intervention, viewed these accusations as another instance of external powers meddling in their sovereign affairs. The memory of past interventions and the ongoing challenges of asserting their autonomy in the international arena fueled a collective sentiment of indignation and resistance. The timing of these accusations was also critical. Burkina Faso has been grappling with significant internal challenges, including a persistent insurgency in the Sahel region, which has put immense pressure on the country's military and security forces. In this context, the military is not just seen as a security apparatus but as a critical institution safeguarding the nation's stability and future. The accusations from the United States therefore struck a nerve, as they appeared to undermine the very institution that many BINAB views as a bulwark against chaos and disorder. Furthermore, how these accusations were presented exacerbated the situation. The U.S. government, through various channels, made these allegations public in a way that seemed to bypass diplomatic norms and protocols. This unilateral approach was perceived as high-handed and contributing to the sense of national humiliation for a country like Burkina Faso, which is struggling to assert its place and voice in the global community. Such a powerful nation like the United States was particularly concerned, and the protests that ensued were therefore a complex reaction to a combination of factors. On the surface, they were a direct response to the specific accusations against the military. However, at a deeper level, they reflected a broader association with what is seen as a pattern of foreign interference in Burkina Faso's affairs. This interference is not just limited to the United States but also includes other Western nations and international institutions that are often perceived as imposing their will and agendas on the country. These protests were marked by a broad spectrum of participants, including civil society groups, political activists, and ordinary citizens. The demonstrations were not just a display of anger but also a manifestation of a growing sense of national consciousness and solidarity. Protesters carried banners and chanted slogans that emphasized national pride and sovereignty, making it clear that their grievances were not just about the military accusations but about a deeper desire for respect and self-determination. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization and identity. Let's continue now. The Burkina government, caught in the crossfire, had to navigate a delicate situation. On one hand, it needed to address the serious allegations of human rights abuses and ensure accountability within its military ranks. On the other hand, it had to manage the public outcry and the nationalistic fervor that the accusations had ignited. The government's response included calls for dialogue and a thorough investigation into the allegations, coupled with efforts to reassure the public of its commitment to, in terms of national sovereignty and dignity. In turn, the situation posed a diplomatic challenge. Burkina Faso needed to engage with the United States and other concerned parties to address the allegations while maintaining its stance against what it perceived as unwarranted interference. This required a nuanced approach that balanced accountability with assertiveness in defending the Nawat's honor. What does show? Tests show the accusations against the armed forces have galvanized a wave of nationality. Any Binab view their military is a symbol of national unity and resilience, particularly in a region plagued by instability and external threats. The protests are, a collective assertion of national pride and a rejection of perceived foreign meddling. The protesters argue that the U.S. accusations are not only unfounded but also hypocritical. They point to the double standards often applied by West countries, i.e., which sometimes overlook or downplay human rights abuses committed by their allies while condemning those of other nations. This perceived injustice has fueled a broader sense of anger and defiance. The protests also reflect broader geopolitical tensions. Many Binab see the U.S. accusations as part of a larger pattern of Western interference in African affairs reminiscent of colonial-era exploitation and manipulation. This context of historical and ongoing geopolitical struggles adds an extra layer of complexity to the protests. And how have the protests unfolded? The protests have been marked by large peaceful gatherings in the capital city of Ouagadougou and other major towns. Demonstrators have carried banners and chanted slogans defending their armed forces and denouncing what they perceive as unjust foreign interference. The protests have drawn people from diverse backgrounds, including students, workers, and community leaders, highlighting a widespread sentiment of national solidarity. Despite the predominantly peaceful nature of the protest, there have been some clashes with security forces, resulting in arrests and injuries. The government's response has been mixed, initially attempting to suppress the demonstrations through force but later showing a willingness to engage in dialogue with protest leaders. What will be the impact of these protests? The protests have highlighted deep-seated frustrations with the current government, which Burkina and ABI feel has failed to adequately address issues of corruption, inequality, and government. The demonstrations are not just about defending the armed forces, they are also a broader critique of the political and economic status quo. Burkina Faso is situated in a volatile region with neighboring countries like Mali and Niger also grappling with internal conflicts and insurgencies. The protests could have spillover effects influencing political movements and public sentiment in these neighboring states. Furthermore, the stability of Burkina Faso is crucial for security and security, making these protests a matter of concern for the broader Sahel. And the protests have strained relations between Burkina Faso and countries, particularly the United States. This tension could lead to a realignment of Burkina Faso's foreign policy, could driving it closer to other powers such as Russia or China, who are seen as less interventionist in African domestic affairs. This shift could have significant implications for international relations and power dynamics in the region. But why does the U.S. say Burkina Faso does not care about human rights? Is the U.S. fool them, them in the Heart Rouge, Louisiana area, Ibup area, where residents are grappling with a growing concern that threatens their community? For many, the fear of being priced out of their neighborhoods looms large, casting a shadow over their sense of safety and belonging. This fear is not merely a product of economic anxiety, it is deeply intertwined with issues of race, class, and systemic inequality. The Ibup area has long been home to a predominantly black population with deep roots in the local community. However, in recent years the neighborhood has undergone rapid gentrification driven by rising property values and influxes of As a result, long-time residents, many of whom are black, find themselves facing skyrocketing rents and property taxes, forcing them to confront the possibility of displacement. At the heart of this issue is the question of who gets to call Baton Rouge home for black residents who have lived in the Bup area for generations. The neighborhood is more than just a collection of houses, it is a repository of memories, culture, and identity. Yet as property values rise and developers eye the neighborhood for investment opportunities, the very Essence of what makes the BUP area unique is that it is at risk of beta erased. The consequences of displacement extend far beyond the loss of affordable housing for many residents. The BUP area represents a haven in a city plagued by racial tensions and economic disparities. It is a place where they feel a sense of community and belonging, a refuge from the systemic injustices that pervade their daily lives. However, as gentrification encroaches, this sense of safety and stability is increasingly under threat. Moreover, the impact of gentrification is not felt equally across racial lines. Studies have shown that black neighborhoods are disproportionately targeted for gentrification, often resulting in the displacement of longtime residents and the erasure of black culture and history in Baton Rouge. This pattern is all too familiar as black communities continue to be pushed out of neighborhoods they have called home for generations. The fear of displacement is compounded by broader issues of systemic inequality and racial discrimination. In Baton Rouge, as in many cities across the United States, black communities have long been marginalized and neglected by policy makers and developers. Decades of disinvestment and neglect have left these communities vulnerable to the forces of gentrification, and exacerbating existing disparities in wealth, education, and opportunity for residents of the BUP. The fear of being priced out of their neighborhoods is not just about losing their homes, it is about losing their sense of identity. Belonging. It is about fighting to preserve the rich tapestry of black culture and history that has thrived in Baton Rouge for generations. It is about demanding justice in the face of systemic inequality and discrimination. In response to these concerns, community activists and organizers have mobilized to demand action from city officials and developers. They are calling for policies that prioritize affordable housing and protect longtime residents from displacement. They are advocating for greater transparency and accountability in the development process, ensuring that the voice of those most affected are heard and respected. Ultimately, the fight against gentrification in Baton Rouge is a fight for the soul of the city, a battle to preserve the vibrant diversity and resilience of its communities. It is a reminder that the true measure of city-style success lies not in its gleaming skyscrapers or bustling shopping districts, but in its ability to uplift and empower all of residents, regardless of race or socioeconomic status. Tattoos. As Baton Rouge grapples with the challenge gentrification, eaters and policy makers must listen to the voices of those most affected and take meaningful action to address the root causes of displacement. Only then can the city truly live up to its promise of being a place where all residents can thrive and prosper. But the US won't talk about what's happening in its country and is busy talking about what Burkina Faso is doing. How is the media forced to play a role in this in an era defined by the rapid flow of information and the proliferation of digital platforms? The